all this stuff is impacting marketers and marketing, whether it's AI driven media buying or planning or audience identification or generative creative. So if you're into marketing right now, how do we achieve great marketing in 2026? What's your prediction?
Welcome to Contrary to Popular Opinion, a podcast hosted by Vujade Digital. In each episode, we bring you provocative topics and novel perspectives around leadership, business, and marketing that defy the norms because exponential growth demands unconventional thinking and visionary action. So open your mind and let's get into this week's episode.
Hey everyone, Kelly McGuire with Vujade Digital. Excited to get into today's topic for the new year.
Hey everyone, Happy New Year. This is Todd, Kelly's co-host and partner at Vujade. Kelly just wants to dive right in, but first and foremost, before we start, it's a new year, Kelly. It's January 5th. Did you have a good holiday?
I did. It was quieter than they usually have been in the past, which was nice.
Because we did not have any consumer electronics clients to run massive holiday shopping promo deals
or major fitness new year, new you.
Yeah, or a fitness client. So yeah, it was a little bit more quiet. All right. Well, what we were both talking about today is what do we think is going to happen this year, 2026, from a agency and marketing and advertising perspective? What are our predictions? And so you and I chicken scratched out some things. I'm gonna restate those predictions to you to get your opinion. And if you opine on anything that I disagree with, I'm going to share that as well. Or even if I agree, maybe I'll have something
I'm sure there'll be some counterpoints.
We'll see. All right, 2026. I wonder if this is the year. Remember when we started saying the year of mobile?
Oh yeah, for like 10 years. Yeah.
Remember it took, I think I ended up really like focusing on that. I think it was 7 years that we were saying, this is going to be the year of mobile. And
there was a year of virtual reality, the year of, we all know that we're in the year of AI now. That's the whole thing now.
Well, so that's what I'm going to say. So is it fair? Can I go on the record and say that is 2026 the first year that we say this is the year of AI, or was that 2025?
It's going to blend multiple years into it. I think we're already into it, but yeah, I think you'll start to hear nonstop, and that'll be going on for a while.
I'm going to say for the record that I think 2025, everybody was starting to dip their toes in it, start to adopt it, start to work with it. But I'm going to say that 2026 is the year that people are going to say they've fully operationalized it. And so that makes this the beginning of the year of AI for marketing and advertising institutions. All right. With that, one of the things that you and I have been hyper focused on is AI. And is it hype? Is it real? You know, what's sort of the maturity state of it? And what have you read? What are you hearing? Brands, companies, agencies, where are they at with their AI? Do you think they're ready? Do you think they are completely just underestimating what it's going to take? Are they being fooled? What do you think about 2026 and where companies are with AI?
Yeah, so my first 2026 prediction is that many brands will realize that they are nowhere near ready to utilize AI appropriately and will need to heavily invest in foundational data work. And basically by this, what I'm saying is that kind of along what you just said, this whole 2025 was a lot of people discovering and exploring AI and kind of getting started. And what I saw thematically for me was an oversimplification of what AI can do and what it's going to take to truly be as transformational as I do believe it has the potential to be. This idea of it being an easy button or it just doing everything, or it just being, I just simply pay for a tool and it works. I think a lot of people are going to sort of be bitten by the idea that it's not that simple, that like many things, it's only as good as what you put into it. And for better or for worse, AI is fundamentally driven by data and patterns and history and organization. One of the things that I've painfully learned in my journey with AI a lot over 2025 is the need for taxonomy and labeling and organization and being really specific on how the information is structured, how the data is structured, and guiding the systems to be able to appropriately look at it. If you just simply give AI something and say, I want this outcome, that's where you hear these things like hallucination and all these errors come up, is because if you just leave AI to its own devices, it can't fill in gaps really well. It can't figure things out. It takes these semantic things. And I learned a lot of this going down the rabbit hole of literally how LLMs work and fundamentally the way, and it's really interesting. But without going too far down that rabbit hole, what I think brands are going to painfully learn is that in order to get what they want and not be misled, there's a lot of work that needs to be done in collecting historical information, organizing that information, organizing it into systems, labeling it, having the structures, building out all of the thinking and the techniques and the guide rails and the parameters on focusing AI into the outcomes that they want, which is a lot of that training and a lot of that knowledge base. My prediction is that so many brands are like, oh, I invested in this thing, or I hired these people and I did these things, and it's just going to be this amazing thing, are going to be fundamentally disappointed in what they get early on and realize that there's a lot more lift and a lot more that's going to be required before those, what I'll call magical promises that everyone's getting so excited about, will come anywhere near to fruition and truth.
Yeah, but isn't there AI that can just do it for me?
No, there definitely is not.
Oh, there's not. I can't just press the easy button and all that infrastructure stuff that you said needs to be structured. There's not AI to just do that part.
There's AI to help with these things, definitely. But that's the problem, is it's a help. It's a not do it for you. Again, one of the painful lessons that I myself have learned is no matter how specific, and we all know how long-winded that I can definitely be in certain things, no matter how guardrailed, anticipatory, everything I can try and put in, everything still comes with iteration, refinement, and growth in every single thing that I put through. And so again, AI is amazing at supplementing and building these things and making it easier and faster. But I am yet to come across almost any AI that literally just does it for you without any of a lot of that thing. And most of the time is preparing. It's almost like the idea of, I'm trying to think of an analogy of like cooking an amazing meal, right? Like you can ultimately have this system like the crock potter, if you will, right? You throw it all in and it does the cooking. But in order for that to work, you still have to go get the ingredients, lay them all out, redo a recipe, make sure it's all in there. Once it goes into the crock pot, great, the cooking's done. I don't have to sit there and do the cooking. And that's amazing. But there's so much that goes into that, having an amazing meal or the worst thing you ever had going into it if it's not done right.
So as a side note, before we get into our next prediction, how many hours do you think you personally have spent in the last 90 days teaching, exploring, crafting, iterating, exploring, learning? Like, just think about everything you've been doing from an AI standpoint, building GPTs, all the stuff you and I have been. How many hours do you think you've personally put in that goes completely unaccounted for as a value add of knowledge, institutional knowledge that we're developing as a company for our clients' benefit?
I think there's two parts to that. I think there's a percentage of my normal working time that has been dedicated towards that. And then I think there's a percentage of above and beyond time than what I would have otherwise been doing that goes into that. And so I would say, if I had to guess, in 90 days, let's say, I mean, a decent amount of that's going to be certain weekends and elements of that. So let's say let's call it 70 working days within that in total. I'm going to say somewhere between 500 and 1,000 total hours, I think is reasonable to say has gone into that easily at this point. And if you take in the entire year leading into that, it would go way above that. But if you imagine a working, technically 40-hour work week over the course of the year is 2,080 hours, I would say coming up to 1,000 hours, so almost 50% of total bandwidth and time and energy of what should normally be going into an individual's work week. Obviously, that's not necessarily mine, but if you think about it from that capacity, is AI building up and expertise leveling that goes into that.
Well, that's why I'm asking the question, because I think a lot of companies, people, what have you, believe that AI is sort of this easy button that's going to streamline and make everything more efficient. I don't think anybody's accounting necessarily, except for those people who are really diving into it like we are, how much time, energy, and effort we have to put in to learn and upskill and develop the knowledge base and the capabilities around these tool sets. And nobody's paying for that. We just have to make that own human sort of sweat equity investment in the knowledge and the upskill demand and need in order to just be able to turn it into something usable and valuable that will help a business out.
Well, that's the way we've chosen to use it, right? There is another route that I do think gets used where instead of it taking 1,000 hours, like I just talked about, there is a world where it could have saved me a couple hundred hours, and I could have just banked those and gone and done hobbies and done other things if I wanted to. There are ways in which it can be done. I just see the power of it being used for enhancement versus savings. And again, that's a whole argument we've had dozens of times now.
Next prediction, brands getting burned, learning some hard lessons that are already starting to over rely on AI platforms, specifically in media buying, media planning, strategy. Do you think there's brands out there already making mistakes because they're over relying on these tools?
Yeah, so I would boil this down into the claim. And before I make this claim, I will give the caveat that this is not 100% universal. I'm saying that more than not, the majority, not the everything, but my claim for 2026 in predictions is that AI will make a lot of marketing worse, not better, at least in the next year. And that is based on the idea that, kind of dovetailing off of the conversation we just had, which is what I am most fearful of when it comes to AI running paid media campaigns is, as much as it can improve and learn things if it's done right, it can amplify and accelerate wrong decisions just as quickly. And it can be sort of an echo chamber of learning. So if you're not feeding it the right information, if you're misguiding it in any way, it builds upon itself, and it's an exponential worsening of these outcomes in a vacuum. And when you start to remove people who can catch those things and you rely on those outcomes, yeah, I think it can make things a lot worse. And I think that that's exacerbated by the idea that we've always known, for as long as I've run digital media, the kind of the dark side of the medium is that if you want to, if your goal is to look good, if your goal is to deliver a green arrows up report or the perception of value or making things appear as though they are better than they are, that's not that hard to do in this world, because we operate in this sea of numbers and lack of understanding in a lot of ways where it's pretty easy to, I mean, you used to see this a lot with like Facebook ads, right? With what I would call cookie bombing, right? Where things would just go out there and it would take a lot of credit for things that were happening versus actually driving incrementality and growth on things. And there's just a lot of ways that that can happen. You could always buy really cheap, remnant inventory on less than reputable sites, and you could inflate your impression numbers. You could easily run on things that were very click heavy. You could run on mobile that was over indexing on clicks, and you could make your click-through rates look better. Like, there's ways for the numbers to look better than the value they're actually delivering. And when you look at a system like AI that, again, is very focused on inputs and outputs, it's very zeros and ones. If you start to create this echo chamber, this feedback loop of I did this, I saw this, that was what my mandate was, and I'm going to do more of that, it can really narrow in. And if it's kind of off track, it's just too easy for perception of value to drift apart from actual value very, very quickly. And so the wrong inputs, the wrong data, the wrong controls, the wrong outputs, whatever you want to say, I think that can be that governance and that protection, that judgment element that needs to go into running this is a really slippery slope. And I think a lot of people are going to get really, really burned by over relying on this idea that AI can just do it for me. And a lot of money is going to get wasted into those systems on what looks like value, but turns out to not be very valuable. And there's going to be a ton of opportunity cost where there's over reliance and focus on that, and people not doing some of the less obvious, less clear kind of marketing activities that are long-term valuable for a brand. And I think there will be a correction for that. I think a lot of brands and companies are going to buy into AI, buy into the promise, They're going to be hyped up, and it's going to be an overpromise, under-deliver experience that's going to eventually reset this. Okay, that didn't work like I expected. Now I need to go back to the drawing board and pick something else. Like, I gave it a try. It's very few of them are going to live up to the hype and the promise. And then people will kind of be like, all right, I need to actually try something else now. It's not that easy.
I feel like we're already seeing that sensibility in a lot of things, especially around creative. I think we're already seeing the fatigue set in and the realization that it takes a lot of work to get the right outputs. It's just not going to be an overnight instant button that just changes things. And the media side of things, I don't know. I'm curious. You know, there's some new all channel ad platforms out that are proposing that, you know, you can just input your website URL so I can get creative and, you know, your brand colors and logos, and you can give it some photography or assets and a target audience and put your credit card in and give it a budget, and off it'll run to the races. And I do wonder, you know, if you're a small business, let's say in the franchise industry, which we used to do a lot of work in, if you're a small franchise that can spend $1,000 a month, I don't know, maybe that'll be a good thing, that they can just deploy themselves instead of trying to get an agency's attention, you know, or even a freelancer's attention to try and just handle those kind of budgets. So I am curious. I don't think a CMO at a company that's spending hundreds of thousands even, or certainly millions, is going to rely on one of those tech platforms to run their advertising purely through an AI output. You know, maybe one person manning that machine, and they're thinking, oh, I can get rid of paying my agency. I'm going to run this one platform with one person, and it's going to run $5 million worth of ad media for me across all channels.
You know what's funny is so I will concede, I do think that the smaller advertiser that cannot get access to what the best marketing systems can be, pretty good is still better than nothing. And
Sure.
So that is an improvement for them, even if it's still just pretty good and not amazing. I would argue that if you're anything beyond that, you should be striving for amazing, which is not that easy to find. But yeah, my fear is less about the clients or the CMOs as much kind of buying into that. Although I do think that there's going to be a lot of problem in them believing the whole, I can just put it into a system and run it.
Yep.
My bigger fear is actually it's going to be the agencies that overly believe that they can lower their costs and overhead and fees and do the quality work or do good enough to not lose their clients in that methodology, and that it'll kind of backslide into a little bit of this black box that used to exist. I mean, we all know when programmatic first came up, right? It was just ripe for problems. Like, you could kind of snake oil salesman your way through it and basically sell this amazing thing, show something on paper, and no one really knew enough to dig under and know how true and real it was. And there was a lot of profitability to create. I mean, this is back in the days when you'd learn about companies that were making 60, 70, 80% margins on these types of things. And that only existed because of lack of understanding and clarity. I'm not saying it's exactly like that, but it's an environment that is possible in that realm for a little while on that front, where it's like, I give my money over to an agency thinking I'm getting X. They're operating it via Y and benefiting from all of that savings and things like that. But what I could be getting, maybe that produces good enough, right? Maybe the AI produces good enough outcomes to where it doesn't upset me and I'm not going to leave them. But because they took that route, what I gave up on is all of the amazing that could have happened, right? So much of what I look at in the problem is not things being bad or invaluable. So much is opportunity cost. It's what could have been. You know, we always talk about when good enough isn't good enough, but that is the problem that I see happening here, right? Is we talked about, you can make great teams incredible and you can make decent teams good. But now if you're just trying to get to that good layer, you're missing out on this incredible or this amazing opportunity that I feel like that opportunity cost is problematic to miss out on.
I don't disagree. I mean, I think we've already seen some examples of that.
But further than that, when I say AI is worse, this is the minority of what I'm saying. But I genuinely think that some of these AI systems are going to truly waste and burn a lot of paid media dollars. Like, when you see those things where, you know, you're buying ads on the wrong sites or the wrong targeting or the wrong area, like these things you should never see, but we have come across in auditing and those types of things. It's like, oh man, the client spent 75 grand on a campaign that like was going after the wrong people. Like, that's crazy that happens, but it even happens in human driven things. I think you're going to see a lot of those instances that come up with AI. And unfortunately, I think what's going to happen is when that happens, the person responsible, I don't think is, or, the agency or whatever's responsible for that isn't necessarily going to own up to it. They're going to find a way to bury it and hide it and put it in there. And the client's going to have a bunch of wasted money that is like, oh, we had a down month because the marketing's got pressure on it, when it's actually, no, we like wasted a bunch of money and we had to bury it in there. And now we're explaining it away. I do think there's going to be way too much of that for a while.
I do too. I can't disagree with you on that one. So that takes me to the next one. A lot of the partners that we work with are creative agencies. I am definitely hearing from creative directors, the CDs, people like that, that there's definitely a sensitivity and sense of awareness around, AI created creative and how that's already sort of getting a little bit of a black eye. Where is your opinion around generative AI for creative sake?
Yeah. So one of the phrases that became really popular in 2025 is this: creative is the new targeting. And this is based on the systems reading and saying, rather than you saying who you want your ad to be served to, build creative that audience will care about and respond to. And then the systems will go find the people that respond, and then they will optimize on the data. That's the idea: is don't pick who you want to show to, build something that's who will care about it. And then that lets the system find it. So with that in mind, my idea or claim for that prediction is that creative fatigue is going to replace audience fatigue as one of the number one problems in that, which is to say, I had this theory on one of our other podcasts we talked about, where with the rise of AI, the ability for more people to be more quote unquote creative and to produce things, right? I think the thing that we talked about then is, what if people start to be able to make their own music or make their own movies or do all these things? And, we're not there yet, but let's say that comes up. There's an amazingness to that where there's so much more creativity that comes to the surface out of that. I think what the problem that happens within that, though, is the really, really good stuff that comes of that is going to be buried under a mountain of crap. Basically, so much noise and so much extra things that starts to make sorting through for the good stuff really, really difficult. And so with this idea that creative becomes so much faster to iterate on and so much more normalized and so much more AI driven, there may be a small bounce to that in terms of the people that are early on that curve. But as more and more get on board and people are seeing ads more often and they're flooded more often and the change more often, I think it gets really, really noisy. And that idea of having to sort through messaging and inconsistency and seeing too much AI driven stuff that starts to become sort of those types of things. Actually, it's funny. I had my grandma actually texted me in this thing where she saw like a commercial that was clearly AI, and she's older on that and has an opinion on it. She's like, oh my gosh, did you see the AI commercials? They're the worst thing ever. They're terrible. And, it just hits her in a different way. But, it just exacerbates. There is sort of a pushback against, the non-reality of AI creative and the messaging and the deterioration of that. I don't buy so much into, I think younger generations, as they're more used to it and come up, will accept it more and more. But I do think it creates a lack of authenticity and a lack of breakthrough that will become exhausting for people to figure out what matters, what hits home. Like, I think about some of the best commercials I saw. I just said this to my wife the other day. One of the best commercial series that I see right now that I really love, it's the one that says, we can't keep you from becoming like your parents. It's the home insurance thing. It's the one where it's like shows like, people in their 30s and 40s, but like, or younger, talking about like the really odd things that their parents do, like trying to take pictures of groups and stuff like that. And I just think it's so clever. And it reminds me of the ones like, the Budweiser Real American Heroes things, or the things that are so resonant and fun and really, really good creative. I think you're just going to see less of that come through and less of that breakthrough. And that lack of really hard hitting humor or heartstrings or these great campaigns, I think is going to make it harder to actually create resonance and impact with the consumers that ads are trying to reach and convince to do stuff.
Yeah, I've noticed, and my kids even said to me, hey, have you noticed if you're scrolling in your feeds, how much of the content's AI created now? And there's stuff that's, you talk about, well, I don't know when people are going to start creating movies or whatever, or music. It's definitely already happening. Little shorts, I feature length films, but little video shorts or vignettes or things like that. And it's pretty scary, like the magnitude of how much of it's being created, how obvious it is. And then as a result of that, I can see right through it. And then I just skip right past it because I can tell already it's AI, but I don't know if Gen Z Or Gen Alpha is doing that, right? They just might accept it as, well, that's just my new reality. 50% or more of the stuff I begin to see or I'm gonna see is gonna just be AI generated, and they're just gonna be.
But if you get more and more bombarded with that stuff, does it just become harder for anything to stick or to matter? Is it just,
I
does
don't
the
know if it's
attention
good.
span
I
become
mean,
more and more of a problem?
if it's good, right? If you're a brilliant creative director at one of the, doesn't matter what agency you're at. Let's say you're a creative person. You've created some of the best content out there for ads or whatever. I mean, I look at AI like any of the AI generation engines for creative assets is just a different paintbrush. So I think at some point in time, it'll get good enough and it'll work. And anyway, it doesn't matter because it's just going to become the new norm unless people just revolt against it, which I don't think is going to happen.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm not like disastrous on it, right? I do think it'll become the norm and people used to it, and it'll break the. What I think is the stickiness and the impact of really great marketing and breakthrough stuff will get harder and harder to come by and more difficult to go through there. And again, my example of this that I see that's really interesting is I look on Reddit, and Reddit had this whole disaster around, they did this AI training and these things. And the whole idea of Reddit is it is a community of people that, it's question and answer, it's forum-based things, and it's really powerful in that. But I can tell you almost anything that I go through on Reddit now, I would say 75% or more, there's always something in the string of commentary that points out this theory or this thing that, oh, this is AI written, this is AI slop. Like the trustworthiness of people believing that the threads that are existing are real people, it is unbelievable. Almost all of them, somewhere along the line, will be like, this story isn't real. This didn't really happen. This is AI generated. That you can tell with the writing. And it's the lack of trust that's been created in that community that any of the stories or questions or anything that's being pointed out is genuine. It's amazing how much, I mean, I would say the majority of anything that is narrative based that's produced on that, someone at some point or many people at some point will question its authenticity, whether it's a real person that posted it or whether it's AI or not.
Well, I guess the future remains to be seen, though, of whether or not that will be acceptable or not. Again, I think probably in 10 years from now, maybe 50% of the content we consume will be ad generated. That'll just become the new norm. It just like MP3, just like the CD superseded the cassette tape and MP3 files, took over the CD, and there's no stopping it. It's just a matter of we're in that transition period, and everybody's going to poo-poo it in the transition period until it gets to a place where it becomes the new norm, and everything else catches up with it, and then it becomes ubiquitous enough that it becomes okay. Okay, so all this stuff is impacting marketers and marketing, whether it's AI driven media buying or planning or audience identification or generative creative, all these kinds of things. So if you're in marketing right now, what is your prediction? Like, how do we achieve great marketing in 2026? What's your prediction?
So my last kind of prediction for us to cover here is the phrase of great marketing is as much about problem solving as it is about media buying. And this is, I think, really captures my biggest point of thinking and areas of concern and differentiation going into the year, which is these platforms and these systems have done everything they can to make the act of media buying as easy and templatized and simple as possible. But that is a base zero, right? That is just simply using the system at its core minimum to be up and running. From there, there's a spectrum of value and opportunity and effectiveness that comes in. And the promise of AI is that it can help you do that, right? It can help you pick tasks, pick creatives, all that. And I think it can do a lot of that. It can enhance that. But this all only works in a perfect vacuum. If you pick the right ad and you serve it out and things go well and the data is going well, it will work. But not very few things go that way. Even when we work with very sophisticated clients, they generally have a lot of problems that are unique to their situation. Their messaging is hard to nail on. They have competitors. They don't have the big enough budget to break through. They have pricing challenges. They have all of the legal, what they can claim, all these types of things. These are all problems that Again, an AI isn't going to solve on its own, right? An AI is just going to take a set of instructions and it's going to fill in the blanks and it's going to give guidance and it's going to execute and it's going to streamline. But that problem solving element is looking at the big picture and seeing the blank spots and filling in the gaps and figuring out how to solve for, I don't have my attribution data right here. How do I get it right? I don't have my CRM system built out to capture all the right information to give it the most powerful. How do I solve that? I don't have the right nurture system in place to pick up the site traffic that I'm paying to drive and make sure I'm generating the best outcomes out of it. There's all these components that go into great marketing, right? Media buying is sort of the fuel that brings it in, right? It is the amplifier of the message. It is the ability to have that couple of seconds of conversation with the person that you want to hear what you're saying. But there's so many other things that go into whether or not that works, right? What am I saying? What's the message vehicle? Where am I driving that traffic? How am I following up? How am I even knowing if the right person that I'm speaking to wants what I have to sell? What are my competitors doing, right? And so for me, so much of the marketing is being able to look at the big picture. And this is generally wrapped up under a phrase of strategy, right? Strategy is the thinking and the identification of it. The next layer to that is problem solving, because a good strategy is going to look at a lot of things that are not done or ready or working right. And so then the next layer is the strategy knows what a perfect outcome looks like. How do I problem solve the probably very many things that are not ideally set up, all the way to possibly totally broken? And how do I fix them, or how do I improve them, or how do I get them in place? And so much of the work is the problem solving that leads into, when I make those media buying decisions, how do I make sure I'm maximizing the value out of it? And then that allows you to go with, how do I scale? How do I grow? What are my points of diminishing returns? How much could I spend? All those types of things. Don't get me wrong, media buying is very sophisticated as well, and it can be, but just the act of media buying, it's just one cog in a big machine, whereas problem solving most often is the most valuable thing that you can hire someone to do on your behalf. If you don't know marketing that well, or you don't have the time or the bandwidth to look at so many moving parts in a constant changing environment, what you should be paying people to do is to be looking on your behalf to find gaps, to offer solutions, to stress test problem solves and say, we could do this. Maybe it is an AI solution. Maybe it's a, hey, you guys are not able to iterate on creative fast enough. And so this AI can take a blueprint and it can do it. Maybe that is a solution. Or maybe it's analyzing data, or maybe it's filling in a CRM, or maybe it's looking at mixed media modeling. But again, AI is not just going to figure all of those things out, right? It is problem solving is what needs to happen to get to the state of what is the best environment I can spend my money in to get the best results.
Okay, so the new name of our company is Problem Solving. We'll be that for 2026.
I mean, personally, I think that's what we strive to. And when we talk about doing the very best is problem solving is the most valuable thing that we do. It's neck and neck with investing money, but still.
I would agree. We're ultimately trying to solve a problem, which is, how do we get consumers to buy more stuff, more of our client stuff? I'm going to close with, I'm going to just say for the record that I think 2026 will be the year everybody sort of postures that AI is in full swing and fully functional and fully deployed. And I think a lot of people are going to say that and claim that and maybe pretend that. And I think a lot of what you've predicted here today is probably what's actually going to happen in more realities than not. So we'll be here to help people with that if they need help with AI and implementations and understanding of it, because not only have you spent 1,000 hours doing it in the last 90 days, I've probably spent 1,000 hours along with the rest of our team. So we're heads down, and I'm excited about some of the stuff that we're ideating to build using AI. So this is going to be I think a very hands-on construction zone year for us and maybe a lot of others out there. So we'll talk more about it, I'm sure, in every show coming up this year, because this is going to be the year of AI. So we probably can't avoid talking about it in just about every show. It's Monday, January 5th, end of the day. I'm glad, because first day back to work and I'm already fading. So
I will say, as much as I've enjoyed this topic and I have a lot of theories on 2026 and what's going in, my kind of last thought is, I think this same conversation next year, like the 2027 predictions, Those are a lot different in my head, where I think the world will shift to by the end of next year with AI and all of those things. I think we'll have a very, very different conversation on the predictions for that year.
I think we will too. And I think a lot of it will be reflections of some of the, well, what happened in 2026. And I think it'll be a lot of reflections on that.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for listening to Contrary to Popular Opinion, where we challenge you to think independently, push the limits, and take uncommon action so you can achieve game-changing results in your business and your life. To stay up to date with our latest episodes, be sure to click the follow or subscribe button now. Thanks again for listening. See you next time.